Hello, my name is Jacqueline Oludimu. I am the marriage evangelist, and this is the second episode on the divorce series that I'm currently taking us through. And last week I started talking, or in the first video, I started talking about, the basics, just understanding that God has high standards for the covenant of marriage. And if you remember, one of the major things we said last week is the fact that we are to elevate our standards to accommodate Him, elevate our standards of what happens in marriage, what we should do in marriage to accommodate His high standards. But moving on today, I want to take a moment to talk about covenant. When we say covenant, what really are we saying? Because the only way we can understand God's place, God's stand when it comes to marriage is really to understand marriage itself, understand what He had in mind, understand what marriage means to God. Then you will clearly get why He hates divorce, why He will say He hates marital separation or even domestic violence, like we read last week. Remember that the anchor verse for this, all of what we're talking about in this series, at least for now, is Malachi 2:16a. We're just staying with 16a. All right. So if you understand that marriage is actually a deeply divinely covenanted relationship, it's the reason even if you got married in the court, you will see that both of you face each other, you say words to each other, it's a coming together of two people. Do you see? No, even if you had it in your living room, like we had a lot of that during the COVID, season and the COVID period, it's important to still know that marriage is a deeply divinely covenanted relationship because it was first orchestrated. It is God's idea. It's something that came from a divine being, our own divine being, our only divine being. And so if you never understand it, understand that when you sign up to get married, you actually sign up to enter into covenant, with another person, with God. If there is nobody else with you, in that relationship, you can be sure that you are in a relationship with God. Marriage is designed by God and for His purposes. Marriage, weddings, and all the various types of weddings we see are human ideas. But when it comes to marriage was designed by God, and He has purposes for which He designed marriage. I teach a lot about the purposes of marriage. I talk about 5 purposes of marriage that the Lord revealed and shared and opened my mind to, and I have been teaching and sharing that a lot, on various platforms as the Lord would, have me, and even in my mentoring hubs that I and my husband run, as a way to raise a generation of marriages on purpose, right? So marriage is designed by God and for His purposes. So understanding this would help you know that when you sign up to marriage, it's not just something you're doing because you are done with uni or you now have a car, you have a house, and you have a salary, or you have a job. No, it's something you do saying, oh Lord, I'm signing up to your institution. I'm taking on what you designed. Do you see? I want to, be a part of what you designed. And I also want to fulfill the purpose for which you designed it. That's what you do when you say I do. It's not just that you change your status from Miss to Mrs., or you change your status from Mr. unmarried Mr. to married Mr. That's not all there is to it. In fact, that's the least of it. Yes. All right. So when we marry, we are illustrating the nature and the purposes of God if we do it right. And that's why we must be careful that marriage is something that God created for us to represent Him, to represent His purpose and His plan. So it means that we cannot run our marriage anyhow we want it. But I want to still go into this topic of marriage being a covenant. And I want to say that what is a covenant? It's a spiritually binding relationship between God and His people. A covenant is not a contract. I teach that in my God's Prepared Singles Hub, the singles hub that I and my husband, run, mentoring many singles across the world. And one of the major things I share there is that it's not a contract. It's not something you sign today and you just change your mind tomorrow. It actually has legal status. It does in the spiritual realm, not just in the physical realm. So this is why it's deep. And this is why some people, will tell you that after they've gone through a divorce, it's still so hard to, detach. It's so hard to move on. And I know you can say, oh, because they've not found a move on coach. Oh, trust me, I'm a heartbreak recovery coach. And I totally understand that there are two different things. Go on and ask people who will be sincere with you. They'll tell you that it's not that straightforward. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. Marriage is a covenant. It has legal status in the spiritual realm. It includes agreements. It includes conditions. It includes benefits and effects. So if you don't do that, it includes a lot. And God operates by the rule of his covenant. He's not going to operate by the rule of the world's, innovations and all the various coaching methodologies and all the various systems that we have created. He would operate by the rule of his covenant. So the purpose of covenant in the Bible, if you look at the Bible and look at various, people that the Lord went into covenant with, it was to expand God's kingdom. Every time God went into a covenant with a human being, it was to expand his kingdom. It was to showcase the next phase of, his work and his agenda on earth. Yes, a covenant was never established with the end goal of making people happy. And that's something that I really want to speak to, about people coming to marriage and thinking that their marriage is meant to make them happy. When you enter into a covenant, you commit yourself to a relationship. So it's not to a thing. You commit yourself to a relationship. This is why we say those things like for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. Some people have used faith to say, oh, we don't say in sickness and in health. We say, whatever you say, just know that in those up and down times, you are meant to stick to the covenant you made. Sometimes sticking to the covenant you made can mean having physical separation because you want to make sure your life is not endangered. But you must remain faithful to the covenant you have taken. That's why you don't just get married for getting married sake. That's why you get married, because you are sure that this is the person God will have you spend the rest of your life with. And then you take a covenant with that person because of that knowledge that this is the one that God will have me spend the rest of my life with. This is the one that God will have me fulfill the purposes of marriage with. And then we take a covenant and say, okay, we know this. So on that basis, we take this and we ask God to help us all the way. And we go with God, to fulfill the purposes of his marriage. Let me go back to marriage. And happiness. So when we get into a covenant, go and ask the people, someone like Father Abraham in the Bible. Was the covenant he went, that God had with him, was it to make him happy? Oh my God, ask him, he will tell you. Do you see? So it's not, the end goal is not to make people happy. The end goal is for people to stay faithful to the oath, faithful to the vows that they have taken under God. That's why a lot of us, and if you're listening to me, you're most likely a Christian or considering to be a Christian, you will understand why we always get married in church. Even if we don't have a proper big church ceremony or service, we sometimes go for blessings just within the pastor's office, or we even ask them to come to our wedding venue and pray. It's because there's a recognition that this is a covenant. It's not just an agreement. Do you get a pastor to come when you're signing a contract for your business or your organization or your company? No. And so this happiness is actually a result of a well-functioning covenant. It's when the covenant is going as it should that happiness comes, into limelight. That's happiness comes into the picture. It is not the purpose of marriage. Happiness is not the purpose of marriage. And if you start with the covenant, you will end up with happiness. If you stay faithful to the covenant, you will end up with happiness. If both of you stay faithful to the covenant, you will end up with happiness. So let me say a few things about covenant, just so that we're clear as well. A covenant is designed to reflect God himself. Do you see? And that's why your marriage really, if you look at it, is supposed to reflect our God, reflect the faithfulness of our God, reflect the love of our God. This is why it can sometimes be tough, but by the Spirit of God, by the help of God, it can be done. It is being done by many people, and you can do it as well. You can have a marriage that reflects the love of God. You can have a marriage that reflects the faithfulness of God. You can have a marriage that reflects the plans and the purposes of God for marriage. All right. So the marriage covenant in particular is designed to strengthen the capability of you and your partner to carry out the plan of God in your lives. Let me explain that. You know, when we get into a relationship and we fall in love, like we say, and we get married, taking that covenant is meant to strengthen you to be able to stay on the journey. Because what you have done with a covenant is you have gone to seal it. You have gone to sign to say, it's this or nothing else. And so that should strengthen you to say, oh, I'm in this for the long haul. And we are going to go through it together. We are going to fulfill the purpose of marriage. That covenant, that, those vows, those signing the dotted lines should strengthen your capability. So if normally you would just walk out of a contract or a job, if you get an employment or, someone hires your services for a while, if you don't want to do it anymore, you can walk away from it because there's no covenant. There were no vows. The reason that, we take vows is that it strengthens us and reminds us every time that this is a deeper type of relationship and we can't just check out. That checkout spirit is not from our God. He never gives up. His love never runs out. He never gives up. A biblical covenant is a divinely ordained contract that is predicated, on relational unity of purpose. And that's why you don't join yourself to just anybody. You have to be sure that both of you understand what you're about to get into. That's why when I see people getting married and one person understands, a lot about the purposes of marriage and the other doesn't, I wonder how you expect that you're going to be going in the same direction for the long haul. Do you see? And so that's why he's saying that there must be a relational unity of purpose. Do you understand? That covenant, you see, our coming together is based on the fact that we know that this is where we're going. This is what it is about. And so we're happy to go, into it together. Relational unity of purpose. Do you have that in your relationship? Do you know why you have gotten married? Do you know what you intend your marriage, what God intends your marriage to achieve on earth? All right. And so finally, I just want to say that it is important to get this whole covenant, this whole bit about covenant, to get it inside of you, to understand it, to now see why God will say a wife is a man's garment, to see why God will say, oh, I hate divorce. And if you leave your partner, God doesn't like it. I hope you see this, and I hope you have picked something, from this week's video in the divorce series. And next week, I'm going to be talking about a revelation, an understanding that has hit me so hard about divorce, and I want to share with you. And I know it's going to be the game changer for you or anyone who is currently considering a divorce. Thank you for listening. Remember to share with anyone that that this will speak to, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.